today's national briefing with Archbishop Elias Chacour, Melkite Catholic Archbishop of Akko, Haifa, Nazareth, and all Galilee.
Emeritus.
I love that title, Emeritus. I'm Warren Clark, the Executive Director of Churches for Middle East Peace, and I'll be hosting today's call. We want to start by thanking the individuals and organizations that financially support CMEP, as your gifts are making this call possible. All views stated and information given during this conference call are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views or research of Churches for Middle East Peace. Today, we'll be very pleased to have a conversation with Archbishop Chacour. He recently retired after serving since 2006 as the Archbishop. He was born in 1939 to a Palestinian Christian family during the British Mandate of Palestine in the village of Bir'im in Upper Galilee. Along with his whole village, he experienced the tragedy of eviction by the Israeli authorities and became a refugee in 1948 on his own land. He and all his family members became citizens of Israel when the state was created. Ordained and appointed in 1965 as priest of St. George Melkite Catholic Church in Ibleen, a small Arab village in the Galilee region near Nazareth, where Christians and Muslims have lived together peacefully for hundreds of years. Father Chacour realized early that his work in Ibleen would require more than routine priestly duties. His vision that through education, children, youth, and young adults of different faiths traditions can learn to live and work together in peace resulted in the Mar Elias educational institutions, schools that today serve 2,500 students from preschool through high school. Many international groups and educational institutions have honored Archbishop Chacour for his work on behalf of peace. In addition to his nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986, 1989, and 1994, he received the World Methodist Peace Prize in 1994, and in May 2001 was awarded the prestigious Niwano Peace Prize. Also in 2001, Emory University and the University of Indianapolis recognized the work of Father Chacour with honorary doctorates. Archbishop Chacour is the author of Blood Brothers and We Belong to the Land, two wonderful books which I can strongly recommend. After the presentation, we'll be taking questions, which should be emailed to question@cmep.org. I'll pose the questions most asked by participants. You may send in the questions by email at any time. Again, that email address is question@cmep.org. Archbishop Chacour, welcome to Churches for Middle East Peace.
Thank you so much. I start by greeting you with sincere friendship and very deep esteem for what you represent, and I greet all those who are listening to us from far away. I will go right away to our topic. Well, I am a walking contradiction, in that sense that I have in my identity all the elements that are fighting each other for over 60 years and are unable so far to think about the future of their children. Well, I am a Palestinian Arab, and I am a Christian and citizen of Israel. All that does not go together. I am a member of this Christian community of the Holy Land. You might wonder which missionary came to convert us to Christ. Well, we are there for 2014 years. Before that, we were not Christians. I hope you were also Christian long enough to say, I am here in the church. Well, from the very beginning, the first church community was created from 120 persons from Galilee who were in Jerusalem for the day of the Pentecost. And since then, we continued our march towards what I would say the resurrection, towards the kingdom of God, towards spreading the good news that the Prince of Peace, Jesus Christ, has brought us all. And it's amazing to notice that our history and our story are linked to deep suffering and persecution from the very beginning up till now. I'm not asking for pity, or I'm telling a story. And now, very especially, we are living into a confusion of radicalism. The Muslim radical groups who do not hide their intention to slaughter people, to kill innocent people. I mean, it is not the Islamic religion. The Muslim religion does not call to kill people, to slaughter them. This group of fanatics have hijacked Islam and made of it what they want, and it's not the religion of the Arab Prophet Muhammad. But they are very scary. We are very scared. 2 weeks ago, I was in Amman. I went from Haifa to Amman intentionally to visit the Christians, or some of the Christians, who escaped with their life from Mosul in Iraq. There were about 70 people hosted in a parish hall by one of our parish priests. It is heartbreaking to see that a small room was cut into cubics, and in each place there is a family, 7, 8, 9 persons. They sleep together, they eat together, they live together. And when I spoke with them, I took hope, I took courage from them. They said, we are not looking for the past. The past is what we endured. The past is the destruction of our homes, the expropriation of our lands. We are looking towards the future. The future is the most important for us. And we are not the only ones from Iraq who have been compelled to leave Iraq and go toward the unknown, but not coming back to Iraq. And they meant Abraham, the father of the believers. We are really confused and shocked by what we read about our brothers and sisters, the Christians in Syria. I know not only the Christians are persecuted, but all other minorities, Muslim and others, in Syria. But the Christians are those who take the hardest blow in their face, on their existence. You go to Jordan, you find them in the thousands and thousands. In Lebanon, everywhere, you see tents like Bedouin tents in the desert. And inside there are Christian families who have been compelled to leave their home, to leave their land, to leave their business, and come saving their life. So what the future is, I think that what President Obama said a few days ago, that they underestimated the power of Islamic State, and they held them with weapons, with money, with everything. I hope he repents on what he did, and he will do something else to adjust the situation. The Christians of the Middle East are in deep danger. They might disappear totally after 2014 years of existence in the Middle East. And any one of you, every one of you, can make a difference around him or her in telling the story. It's not a one-sided story. We need to make the Christians know better here in the West, in America. You have the power of deciding so many things for the whole world. I wish you don't forget the Christians who are paying their blood for their Christian identity.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Father Chacour. That's very moving. The present political circumstances now in the region are very difficult indeed. We don't know exactly how long or how much the United States is going to be involved. Are you, though, generally supportive of the idea of the United States becoming more directly involved in the region?
I think if the United States can have the power of getting involved without money and weapons, that would be the best involvement they could do. But if the only solution you propose to us, we send you weapons, we send you money, keep your money, keep your weapons. We can live poor, but we cannot live without dignity. I think the United States has a great role to play all around the world, but what is being done in the Middle East is a kind of systematic destabilizing of every regime in the Middle East. Iraq has been destroyed and reduced to groups rivaling each other. Syria is on the same path. What else? Palestine disappeared for a long time. And I think the best support for Israel. I love Israel. I like Israel to be always prosperous. But the best help for Israel would be to help Israeli leadership open up to the real problem, not how to have more weapons in case the Gaza war will come back. This is not security. This is not safety. But to be aware that the important thing is how to get these Gaza people who live in a prison, open prison in the desert for 67 years, let them be free. Then you will be free yourself from this obsession of having more and more weapons. Weapons do not help to solve human problems. With weapons, we notice that you can destroy. How many times Israel destroyed Lebanon because of Hezbollah, because of the Palestinians? So many pretexts, but they never tried to solve the real problem and re-establishing justice for both sides. So I expect the United States to be more active and to use your traditional wisdom of being a broker for peace and justice, not only through this horrible help, which is money and weapons. Now the Arab Emirates are sending money and weapons to the radical groups in Syria and in Iraq. What are they doing with these weapons and money? They are killing, they are slaughtering, they are reducing people to nullity. Money and weapons cannot solve our problem. It's the human dignity, the human self-respect that is needed, and the freedom for all of us.
That's a wonderful message to focus on the moral problems, not just the security problems. The negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians that John Kerry tried to get started last year broke down almost completely last spring. And I think almost everybody has sort of stopped even trying to get together or restart those negotiations. And now President Abbas has gone to the United Nations. Then he's talking about a Security Council resolution or something like that. Can you see, what if anything, can you see in the near term for the problems of the occupation of Palestinian lands and the efforts to try to bring about an end of that occupation, end of the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians? Do you think there's still a possibility for negotiations, or should we start to think about something else? There are some people in this country who say that the answer is not any longer, anyway, the two-state solution, but a one-state solution, a single democratic state. If it's not one, if it's not the other, there doesn't seem to be a third alternative. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, that's a very tough question that needs to be studied before it's answered. Surely, there is hope for the Jews and for the Palestinians to find a way out from this conflict. We do not need anybody to come and teach us how to live together. We need just to remember how we used to live together for centuries and centuries with equal footing on both sides. We need just to put into parentheses the past 67 years, considering them as an exception which confirmed the rule of living together. If you remember the Jews in Morocco, the Jews in Lebanon, in Alexandria, in Baghdad, they were masters like their Arab friends. They were living together. We need to come back to that. The problem of Israel is not its military security. The problem of Israel is the real fear that is deeply instilled in the heart of our Jewish brothers and sisters. They are afraid for their survival. They're afraid for their dignity. But their dignity cannot be protected with weapons and with violence, with perpetuating the occupation of the Palestinians. What is the West Bank? What is Gaza, if not a huge prison with people who are depressed, people who have no freedom to circulate? They have the right just to survive, and that's not a human life. I think there is a way for peace, and peace is the way. We don't need to wait till peace comes so we live peacefully. If Israel, and I think they have enough wisdom to think in a different way, our future is to live together, not side by side, with the Arab Palestinians, Lebanese, Jordanians, Egyptians, and so on. We have to find a way how to live together. And then we'll find it. We'll find it. The key to all the security problems of Israel, to my mind, surely I'm not a politician, I might be wrong, but I'm convinced of what I think. The key is to solve the Palestinian problem. And how can they solve it if they continue the occupation, they multiply the settlements, they keep Gaza under human condition? That's no way to live. And that's only a preparation, God forbid, for another turn of fightings that would be more atrocious than all the previous ones. We have witnessed that in the last war against Gaza.
Thank you, Archbishop. This question comes from Alexander Patico, who represents Orthodox churches on our board. What specific sorts of programs can facilitate the kind of remembering how we live together that you said would be the solution? How can fear be banished in this special situation?
Well, I think we are not people who are crazy and idiots. We are people who are intelligent, people who are seeking, looking for ways. But the way, we know what the way is not. We are not able so far to discover what the way should be. The way is not to foster enmity and to paint a very negative image of the other, the absent. In the Palestinians, the image of the Jews. In Israel, the image of the Arab. All that does not help. It's an educational process. For me, a sign of that in Israel itself, since I'm an Israeli citizen, would be to restore, to reform the educational system and to stop this segregated system. The Jews study alone, the Arabs study alone, those have their program, Arabs have their own program, and whenever the government needs money, they make additional cuts on the small subsidies they give for our Christian schools. It is important to rethink why are we treating each other in that way. Is that the way that will build the future of Israel and the Arabs, or it's a way that will destabilize the Middle East, Europe, and America will have its part. We don't want to reach that situation.
Thank you. This is a question from Roger Schmidgall. He asks, how can Christians best show Jesus' love to radical Muslim extremists? What should the Christian response be to these radicals?
Well, the thing I will never do is to start preaching to Christians what they have to do. What I want to mention here, what you don't see at all on your TV, because it's a positive profile of Christians in the Middle East, is the response of the Christians in Iraq and the Christians in Lebanon to the manslaughter that's going on almost daily in Iraq. They quote the New Testament, you kill us, we love you. You hate us, we don't hate you. You take our home, we give it to you. We don't understand what you do. This is the Christian response, but that cannot be the response of everybody. People have their ego, their personality, their feelings. I am very, very deeply hurting because I'm still a refugee in my own country. When I said to Mr. Perez while visiting me at the Archbishopric, Mr. Perez, I'm speaking to you as a refugee, a deportee from Israel into Israel. I am a native of Bar'am. And Shimon Peres, with all his candor, answered, Father Chacour, when you left Bar'am, you were 8 years old. It's 60 years ago. Didn't you yet forget Bar'am? When are you going to forget that Bar'am is your native village? I said, Shimon, you left Palestine 2,000 years ago. It was not the Palestinians who expelled you out. It was the Romans. And you kept remembering that Palestine is yours. You came back, reduced our life to misery. Tell me, when are you going to forget that Palestine is yours? And Shimon Peres, with all his clarity, said, touché. Well, touché means nothing for me. Means a kind of verbal discussion. Yeah.
My goodness. Well, speaking of your exchange with President Shimon Peres, many people question whether there are adequate leaders these days who can work for accommodation, for agreements, for peace. Some Palestinian leaders, I understand, are in jail. There seems to be a lack of people who are interested seriously in negotiating, sometimes on the Israeli side. Do you have any comments about leadership on the two sides?
Well, I'm the last to dare instructing the Jews who is their good leader, their bad leader. The same thing to the Palestinians. It's the Jewish people who has to get more awareness of their future, the future of their children, and to choose, to elect the ad hoc, the good president who can lead them towards freedom, towards dignity. The same thing to the Palestinians. We do not expect or wait for the United States to go there and to say, we take Saddam Hussein, we put Malik. Malik is much worse. Yeah? We take Bashar al-Assad, we put this Islamic State, which is a crime against humanity. Well, it's not to the United States to decide who is the president of whom. It's the people there who have to decide. One exception. I think the president of the United States should not be elected by the Americans alone, but by all the world. If you want to have this influence, we have to see who the leader in America is. It's complicated. I think we have leaders who think about arming their people, about defending their people, about protecting their people from all kinds of violence without taking the means to dissolve the violence and to prepare some peaceful coexistence together. We don't want to survive side by side with the Jews. We want to live with them, want to share everything with them. We want to be integrated, for example, as Arab minority inside Israel. We want to be integrated into the body of Israel. Our problem is the response of Israel. They encourage people who are very fanatic to go into the army, to be drafted in the army, and to try to influence us. I was approached by generals of the Israeli army to be to sign a paper obliging every Christian young man to go into the army, which I will never do, because I would just divide ourselves from the Muslims. That would be a fatal blow into our existence. So that's important for me. Now Israel is inventing, and that's very, very dangerous, a new nationality for Palestinians, Palestinian Christians. In Israel, you can go and say, I'm not a Palestinian Christian, I am an Aramaic Christian. What a silly thing. That would just put the kind of division between us and the Muslims, and our future, whether we want it or not, will be with the Muslims. And the Jews the same thing.
Archbishop, you, as you've just demonstrated, are an articulate spokesperson for bridging the gaps between Israelis and their neighbors. You're one of the outstanding spokespersons for building bridges. At the same time, in our country, we hear our debate is often very kind of polarized. You hear people say, I'm very pro-Israel, I'm very pro-Palestinian. There don't seem to be too many people who are looking at both sides and saying, what can be done about this problem? There's not one narrative, there are many narratives. There's not one single issue, there are many issues, and as you just said, it's just complex. Are there any tools that you can think of to help Americans understand the complexities, that there is more than one narrative? Your books are wonderful beginning of this. Are there other things that you can think of to help Americans understand that there are two stories, two narratives, two tragedies, two opportunities?
Here I invite the American people, every American, to think seriously. What do Israel and the Palestinians need for their future? What peace they need? I don't expect any American to bring a mysterious magic way to make peace. And I don't see any bad thing in an American who says, I'm pro-Israel. God bless you and bless Israel. This is not bad. Or another says, I'm pro-Palestinian. Why not be pro-Palestinian? For once you would be on the right side, right? But the problem is, who gave any outsider to the Palestinians, the Jews, the right and the wisdom to say, I am pro-Jew, that means I'm anti-Palestinian. I'm pro-Palestinian, am I anti-Jewish? Why should that imply the other, when in fact what we need is one more common friend, not one more enemy on either sides? And that's what many, many, many people outside the conflict find is easy to take. Take sides, so you become one-sided and blinded.
Thank you. I think many people in the United States are asking the question, what can we do? This question comes from Dennis Fredo, who represents the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America on my board. If you were advising American Christians who sincerely are looking for peace and want to do something, want to take some steps, some measure, take some action on their own to try to promote reconciliation. Are there specific things you would suggest that they do, or they read, or that they try to investigate?
I'm sorry, you are making my life difficult with your very wise question that need to be studied before they answer. I want to remind everybody who listens to us that these are improvised answers. I did not have time enough to elaborate them, mainly in your beautiful English language that I don't master so well. I think that the evangelical Christians, whom I sincerely love, have a very special responsibility. First of all, to remember that Christianity did not start with the birth of evangelical Christianity. You are 150 to 100 years. It's not the start of Christianity. We were there 2,000 years before you started. And unless you relate to us, you link with us, and you consider yourself as the last part of this very long procession, you recognize your Christian brothers and sisters in the Middle East. You try to link with them. You try to understand what they need. Your love for Israel would not be a real love, because then it is self-justification, and that's not what Israel needs. We know that you can do lots of things, but again, please, take the side of Israel. Israel needs your friendship, but who told you that Israel needs your one-sidedness, needs you to be the enemies of the Palestinians? It's exactly what happened to the Jews during World War II, when everybody was against the Jews. The Jews were considered as dirty, and 6 million lost their lives because they were not considered human beings. And that's the horror of horrors. It is time that we do not transfer the bad image that was hiding the beautiful face of the Jews to the Palestinian very beautiful face, and treating them as terrorists. We are not terrorists. We are rather a terrorized nation. We are not terrorists. We love you, unless you can accept to love us, to learn from us who our compatriot, Jesus Christ, was and is now. I wonder what Christ you would form for yourself. It would be any kind of Christ, but not Jesus of Galilee. Thank you.
Thank you, Archbishop. This next question is related to the answer you just gave. It's from Tim. He says that he has heard that many Christians in the West support Israel because they believe it is Israel's biblical right. This gets to the question of biblical authority, interpretation of the Bible, and you started to address this kind of question, but if you're talking to someone who feels very strongly in the straightforward interpretation of the Bible as giving the land to the children of Abraham, what would you say to that person?
The answer is very simple, but would that friend be open up to accept the simplicity of the answer? That's another problem. I think one of the greatest sins that we Christians commit very often is to use biblical arguments in order to justify political stance. Also, you can find in the Bible saying God does not exist. Is that really what the Bible wants to give us? Or you have to put God does not exist in its context. The idiot says God does not exist. Don't be idiot, please. If you speak about Abraham, who was Abraham? Was he the father of the Jews? Was he the president of Israel? Or in the Bible, he was and is a father of many nations? Doesn't he say about himself in the Talmud, the Jewish Talmud, Ger Anochi Hai Ben Am Goy, I am a Gentile living among Gentile nations. That's Abraham. That's Abraham. And my goodness, if you want to give the land to the Jews, let them take much more land in America. Why not? I will not be unhappy. But the Bible if it justifies that the Jews live in Palestine? Does it ever justify confiscating lands from the other people in order for them to enjoy it? Take the story of Naboth. Naboth was a Palestinian. And you know his story about Ahab, the king of Israel, and Isabel. And Prophet Elijah came and said, King of Israel, you have killed Naboth the Palestinian, and you will inherit? No, says the Lord God. You will be killed with your 2 sons and your wife as you killed Naboth. We have so many things to counter argument of the evangelicals. Take Isaiah. What does he say in the 1st chapter? I have reared children. I prepared everything for them. I gave them whatever they might need. But the cow knows, the donkey knows, and Israel does not know its own God. Do I need to say that Israel is so idiot they don't know God? It's only a passage in the Bible to tell us we are not allowed to cause calamity for others in the name of God. So please do not be selective in reading the Bible. The Bible is not citations. The Bible is a story, the history of God running after man, and God thirsted to find man again. Adam, where are you? And this question is still asked to every Christian who relate to Israel, to others, with the same seriousness.
I love that quotation from Isaiah. Some people think that's where St. Francis got the idea of the cow.
No, it has nothing to do with that.
And the ass in the creche. Archbishop, when you and I were having dinner some years ago in Haifa, you mentioned that you were thinking about a book, another book, this time based on the Beatitudes. Are you still thinking about putting together a series of homilies on the Beatitudes?
My problem with you is that you don't forget anything. Well, all the time I was acting Archbishop, I was almost unable to read anything. I was submerged into problems, into pressure, into accusation, into so many bad things. But since I retired, every day I read 3 to 5 hours. Not theological books, but novels, theological books, spiritual books, philosophy, whatever it comes in. And I started writing. I already wrote the first half of the book, the Sermon on the Mount. And you know, for me, the Sermon on the Mount is not an addition of few speeches of the Lord. The real Sermon on the Mount is Jesus Christ himself. Yeah? And I am most privileged to be able to have time to contemplate on that. When it comes, I will tell you.
We will look forward eagerly to the fruit of your retirement. Here is a question from Frank Bamberger. He asks, are you acquainted with the study Victims of Their Own Narrative? Portrayal of the other in Israeli and Palestinian school books. This gets into the question of incitement and so forth. Is the study a constructive step forward? Do you think that, do you take exceptions with any of the conclusion of the study? And do you suggest that this study be followed up?
I think this is an excellent idea, I think. People who fall victim of their own imaginations, or they use their own past problems in order to justify their political existence. It is true. But people who fall victim of their own imagination, they need to be helped seriously by a two-sided friend. I think such a study might be very well, very helpful, provided the result should not be decided up front before you study the situation. This is one of the main problems of the Middle East. In the past, Arabs used to say, we need justice. Now, many countries start proning the fact they are the victim of the Zionist state. It's not exactly that. It's more complicated than that. I think I would encourage such a study, and I would love to be part of it if that would be possible.
Thank you very much. One of the issues that is discussed a great deal, not only in the churches but in other communities in the United States, and not only in the United States but also in Europe, is what some people call BDS, boycott, divestiture, and sanctions.
Yeah.
They think that the way to help, encourage, hold up the need for reconciliation is various forms of boycott or divestiture of investments or sanctions against the state of Israel. Do you have any views about BDS?
I'm sorry you consider me as a kind of specialist in politics. I think those who take the decision are not crazy people. They're intelligent people. And they had reasons to take that decision. Whether it's wrong or right, it's another problem. When they took it for valuable reasons. Now, what to do? To corner them, take back your decision, that would be an affirmation of the first decision. Instead of that, I proposed to the Presbyterian Church exactly, instead of being busy with divestment or anti-divestment or return, goodness, keep away from that and try to invest strongly into two big projects. One Palestinian project that's open to the Jews, and one Jewish project that's open to the Palestinians. And forget about the past, whether it was right or wrong. It was done and it's a fact. Yeah.
What kind of projects might that be? What would you imagine?
Well, that should be studied with the people on the ground. I'm not there to dictate what they have to know. I know that for us inside Israel, the biggest problem is education. That might be the solution. You know, I worked so hard to open a university, an Arab Christian Israeli university. The title is so complicated already. Arab Christian Israeli, why goodness, that's too much. But after 8 years of continued work and labor and challenges, we got the accreditation, and we got also the recognition by the State of Israel, by the government of Israel, of this academic institute. But at the last line of this signing, it was said, the State of Israel will not at all share the burden or give subsidies to that institution. That means you are free to make a child, but he has to be born without possibility to breathe. Yeah. So we did not do it.
As I recall, there was a proposal, maybe you were involved in it, perhaps not, that, as I understand it, Arab citizens of Israel there's no university level, as you just said, in the Arabic language, but that they sometimes are sent outside of Israel, to Jordan, for example, to study at the university at government expense. And if the Israeli government is spending money to send Israeli Arab citizens to Jordan to study, why not have an Arab university in Israel? Do you know what the barriers are to that?
I think that's an excellent question, and I doubt if Israel spends any money to send any Arab student to study in Jordan. It's the parents who work daily to pay the fees and the needs of their own children, and we estimate up to 11,000 Israeli students who go study in the Jordanian universities. Once I had a meeting with top officials of the Ministry of Education. I said, are you aware of what you're doing? 11,000 citizens of Israel go to study in Jordan. They are mixed with the Arab mentality there, which is not bad. But they do not have the experience of a pluralistic society as they might have here in Israel. They will never know the Jews while they're studying. The Jews will not be part of their imagination. Instead of doing that, why don't you encourage 1,000 Jordanians to come and study in Israel? And the answer I got, the only one I got, who told you that we are interested to have them with us? A kind of spirit of superiority.
Oh.
Too much, too much. It's like a little frog who saw the big cow grazing there. And the frog said, why I am so small and this cow is so big? I will become bigger than the cow, and it start breathing more air, and it became a little big, as big as the nail of the cow. I will arrive, and I will reach the cone. She started taking more breath till she exploded and came back to be smaller than it was at the beginning.
I've talked to lawyers about the situation of minorities in Israel, Jewish minorities, and they say that from a legal perspective, Israeli law is very, very good on individual freedoms, on individual rights. And where there is a difference is sometimes on collective rights. That is the desire for institutions, we mentioned an Arab language university, access to education, access to healthcare, access to certain kinds of housing and that sort of thing. In your view, is this a major concern in Haifa, the limitations that are still placed on various kinds of civil opportunities for minorities in Israel?
May I please correct one thing? You
Please.
said that we wanted to have an Arab university speaking Arabic. No, we wanted everything to be taught in English.
Ah.
We are very much aware of the importance of having a lingua franca, to speak the language today of humanity. Without speaking, without studying in English, they will be poor students. They will know nothing. In Jordan, all universities teach in English, all of them, and that's what we wanted. And we're not against teaching some topics in Hebrew. Why not? Our Arabs in Israel know Hebrew better than most of the Jews who came from Russia or from the Arab countries. Yeah.
Fine. Here is another question touching on faith, a very sensitive subject, and that is belief in the end times. That is that some people talk about premillennial dispensationism and the fear or the hope of the second coming of Christ, and that certain things must be fulfilled before the second coming of the Messiah. And that is sometimes used for political reasons, political purposes, to promote settlement expansion, or in Judea, Samaria so-called. Do you have any comment on that?
I think I have one only comment. Is what happens with Jesus Christ after the resurrection, when he was walking along the Mount of Olives with his disciples, and they asked him, Lord, is it in this time that you will restitute the kingdom for Israel? And he said, idiots you are. Don't waste your time knowing what's proper to God. And the end times might be very beautiful. I am not interested, because I'm too busy dealing with our today, not with the end times, to forget our problems today. The best preparation for any end time is to find us all together hand in hand. So I leave these who are busy guessing and tell them, my religion, my faith is not a faith of guessing, it's a faith of acting. Acting now, not for the 100 years to come, but with my neighbor today. Yeah? It's very easy for us in Israel to say, we love the Chinese, we like the Japanese. It's not there the problem. Or we love God. It's not the problem. The problem, do we love the Palestinians? Do the Palestinians love us? It's that the problem. Yeah? And it's very well illustrated in the New Testament and in the Old Testament. Yeah? Woe, say the Old Testament, to those who refer to the end days. These will be very hard to everybody. Yeah? So let God work his business, and we work with each other.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Archbishop. I think for the moment that's, hold on please. Here's a question from Doris.
Yeah.
Doris Worrell, our grassroots coordinator. She says, I have visited the Mar Elias schools many times, but not recently. How are things going this year? We hope to be there in November, and we're looking forward to it. You have, I think, are responsible, I said in the introduction, to something like 2,500 school children who, in all probability, would not be in school was it not for you and the schools that you created. How are your schools faring? How are they doing? Are they growing? Are they stable? How are they doing?
The school is doing fine, despite the big problem that we have to face every day, because we feel that the state of Israel, I'm sorry now to speak about the state of Israel, has a politics to dry out these schools. That means to drain them from all their resources. And we receive normally a small subsidy from the Ministry of Education in Israel. And this subsidy has been cut 35% during the past 10 years. Last September, they added another cut in the subsidies they give us, 18% at once, which creates a problem that's not solvable with goodwill. It's solvable with money here. And the first time the Christian schools gathered in Nazareth and decided to start the school year with a strike. We closed all our schools because for 3 years we are begging the Minister of Education to meet with the bishops so that they can tell him what their pain is. That's the least they could do. He even did not answer their question, their letters. So they said, we'll go on strike. When they saw it's serious, schools will be on strike the first day, and that would be in all the international press. They send us the General Director of the Ministry of Education to meet and to say, we'll meet on the 9th of December. And we met on the 9th of December. Nothing happened, only empty promises. You know, on one side, the Israeli officials like Peres, who is a very honest man, repeat and say, we need the Christians, we need them to be with us, we don't want them to go. And from the other side, they do everything to say, pack up and go. Yeah? And we don't know what to do. But our students are excellent. I say to everybody, all the time I was in the school with the other students, I never got older. I got always more mature. But since I became Archbishop of Galilee and was transferred to Haifa, every day I got older and older and older. I escaped, I wanted to retire, and I'm happy. And thank God for this great gift.
The Christian schools in Nazareth and other cities, how much of the tuition is paid by parents in whole, and how much comes from the state?
Yeah, this is the real problem. We used to take something symbolic from the parents, because these parents are citizens of Israel. They pay taxes, they pay all their duties, but they need to receive the service back. They don't. So when Israel makes a cut of 10%, 20%, we need that money to pay the salaries of the teacher. What do? We have to impose that on the parents. What happened? The parents are not happy. They are angry. They accuse us. And many of our best students would leave and go to governmental schools where studies are gratis, but with no end to their faith or to their identity. But we are determined to continue to survive, to continue. We have been there before the existence of Israel, and we want to be there all the time Israel exists. I don't want to say after Israel. I don't wish that. Okay, thank
The size of the Christian community in Israel, is it, I think the number you mentioned is between 130, 150,000, something like that. As best you can tell, is that number steady? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing?
Well, it is now stable, I think, but we Christians, unintentionally refuse to consider that there is a cryptic church in Israel that we don't want to recognize officially. It was never asked from us. And it is the Christians who came from Russia, from the Soviet Union, when Israel made everything possible to bring into Israel 1 million Russian Jews. And soon they discovered these were not all Jews. 15, 20, 30. They went up to 35% of these 1 million are not Jews, they're Christians. And these Christians were hiding. That means they did not publicize their faith. But now they're prosperous. They are efficient. They have influence. They manifest, they say we are Christians. They buy an old garage and make it a church, an old meeting hall that was abandoned, and they make it church. If they are only 30%, they would be then 300,000 Christians, Russians. The future of Christianity in Israel depends also on the future of these Christians. We are now 150,000 Palestinian Christians. Most of them, 95% of them, live in the Galilee region. But when your officials come, mainly Christians, me in Rome,